I chose these 5 concepts because I think they are essential in order to share my point of view. They are love, childhood, fear, attachment, and the being. I believe they are concepts we all go through in our lives no matter what. And I think they are important things to understand. In order to understand and transcend ourselves. I think that everything exists and everything that we are beings from love, beings by love. But, however, sometimes we don't really understand what love means. Amor, love, actually comes from the Latin without death, and therefore it means life. It doesn't mean an emotion or something related to us as partners, family, loving beings. It simply means to live, to be able to be alive. Love for me mainly has to do with birth, with daring to experiment, being able to live life, not being scared of living, daring to do what one feels that they really should do. I think that's the real, literal meaning of love. It means to live. Although we often relate this concept to dependency on others. But this has to do with our fear of living. That was one of the other concepts I was going to touch on, that I'd like to touch on. During childhood, which according to me, is the most fundamental moment in which we learn to love, to experiment, to find ourselves, to enjoy ourselves. That is also a moment in which society, everything surrounding us, conditioning us, and starts telling us what is wrong, what is right, who to talk to, who not to talk to, what is beautiful, what is ugly. They start to condition us. And in that conditioning, when one really feels that they have to experience something, they want to experience something, they start to question themselves. Wasn't that bad? Is that good? Due to external conditioning. And this leads us to fear. The fear of not knowing what is really right or wrong. I feel it's wrong because someone else told me it's wrong. And because childhood, which takes place the first 7 years, is essential in order to learn to live, to learn to grow, to develop who we really are and nourish what we have inside. Education, family, condition us so much through their own fears that they create new fears. And they are fears which become our own. In the first 7 years of life, anything that is said to a child will condition them for the rest of their lives. It's called the first septennium. And from that moment onwards, if we don't allow ourselves to live, and we don't allow those kids to live, to really evolve, they will be conditioned by fear. And fear will mold their whole life. It's going to structure their whole life. That fear of what will they say? Fear of teachers, parents, bosses, the system, politicians, everything around us when we go out. Fear of what will happen if I leave what I have in my life. There starts to be many fears that were instilled in us in the first 7 years of life, and fears have a positive and negative side to them. The positive side is that they defend us from what we can't deal with, that which can attack us, which can hurt us. Fear protects us from that. And often, well, humanity basically survived thanks to fear throughout its history. However, fear can be a great hindrance when one decides to go beyond, to trespass the limit. And one must transcend personal limits first, family limits, the limits of society, and then the limits of the species. Going outwards, going out searching for things that is what made us grow as a society today, what made us have what we have. If we hadn't overcome those fears that didn't allow us to go out, we would have never done everything we have done. So the love that we experience during childhood is that love that we often block when we say, be careful, you're going to fall. Don't touch that because you're going to get burnt. They're all conditionings that the children need to experience. Knowing that they're going to burn, they're going to fall. They need to experience it in order to really love their experience, which is what love is really about. It's the relationship we have with life. So if we block that love in our childhood during those first 7 years of life, then the fears are going to really condition us when it comes to having to recognize who we are, what we came to do in this world, and what can offer others. And sometimes something really important to take into account is that we tend to think that fear is what we really are, and what we have is what gives us the security that nothing will happen outside. And that makes us become attached to things, to realities. That's the other topic of attachment. Attachment actually comes from fear. Fear of things, fear of changing. What will happen if I don't have this? Or if I don't have my house, or my things, my family? So I start attaching myself to realities that are not mine, that never belong to me and will never belong to me. However, they are just tools, elements that help me love what I do. But when I am in fear, I believe they are the only thing I have, the only thing I'm going to be able to do something with. So then I attach myself. I hold on to a reality that is not even mine. And there comes a point often, which sometimes arrives when we are over 60, and that's the sad thing about it. When we look back and wonder what we are doing in our 20s, 30s, 50s, before retiring, was what we wanted to do. Was it really the purpose which I wanted to live for? Or did I live through fear and everyone else's conditioning? And that question leads us to find ourselves again. And therefore, we have to stop having fear, letting go of the things as we know we're going to die. And we have to realize that at some point we won't be able to take everything we possess with us. We have to let go of everything and start being like children again. We go back to childhood. We have to start living like children again, learning new things, going on new adventures, experimenting things I had never done before, and that makes me find myself again. It makes me remember that in the first 7 years, I knew clearly who I was. But then I ended up being who everyone else told me to be. Fear told me who I had to be. Attachment told me who I had to be. And when I find out that all of that didn't really make me happy, or it makes me feel content but not happy, I have things. I achieved that thanks to fear, but what do I do with it now? That's where the inner search begins, when I start to look within, to look for who I really am. And the being, which is the last topic I chose, I believe it is the objective we all get to, even if it's in the last second of our death, when we wonder, who am I and what did I live for? What did I do all this for? What did I love for? My creation, which was my own life. That's why I think that if we had the chance to ask ourselves who we really are and why we are here since our childhood, we would probably be able to live our life from love, enjoying each instant, each moment, feeling and doing what we feel in each moment, allowing ourselves to transform our reality, to let go of our reality, get to know new places, new people, advance forward in our lives without having fears, blockages, or attachments to what we have created in our lives. And through that path, being able to really find ourselves, living what we really came here to do and what we really wanted to do from an early age. That's why I think the summary of it would be to be able to live our lives from the being, from who we really are, and not from what others tell us we have to be. And from there, we can really change our reality, the realities of those around us, and the reality of the world through all the people that dare to live from love, that dare to be themselves through letting go, through not being afraid, and advancing towards the question, who are we and why are we here?
Mahal sa